Hello and welcome to the Glowface Digital Wellbeing Podcast. I am, of course, your host, David Talbot. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's podcast. Really excited to bring to you another idea that's kind of been floating around my head of late. If you're watching on YouTube, though, you may notice a bit of an addition to the background. It is a new poster that I've got of a poem. It's my favorite poem by a guy called Charles Bukowski. I might have mentioned him before on the podcast. And the poem is called The Laughing Heart. Hopefully it adds a bit of a nice touch to the podcast and to, I guess, the scenery that has been my guitars for a long time. But it's one of my favorite poems. Highly encourage you to go Google it, check it out. It's a really great poem and a really great description of, I think, what it means to why should you pursue something and why should you pursue being better. And I think that really applies for me to this whole podcast and this whole Glowface initiative. Really just pursuing something for the sake of, as Charles would say, pushing back the darkness to find some light. So that's the latest update on the background there, and I appreciate you checking out the podcast. Absolutely. Look, let's get right into today's topic, and today's topic is how long do I have to do this for? That's the name of the podcast, and really it comes from actually a book that I've been reading lately by who's probably, to my mind, the most well-educated individual, the smartest person in this space of digital well-being and communication, connection, social media. And she's been doing this for 40 years, a woman by the name of Sherry Turkle, and she's a MIT professor who is just written several books on technology and communication and connection and how we interact with each other through technology. And she's followed it from the 80s and really, really closely studied it for decades and decades. And her insights are just really, just incredible. Savvy and insightful, as the New York Times would say on the front cover. But really, it's true from really insightful things. And the book Alone Together, I probably will spend some more time on some different topics from the book. But why we expect more from technology and less from each other is really amazing. She's an interesting writer in the sense that she interviews a lot of people, which is a bit unusual. She'll spend chapters talking about how people interact with their devices, and there's a lot of time being spent about robots in this book. People interacting with robots through the 90s and noughties and how they enjoyed the company of robots. And so it's a bit of a slow read if you're thinking about it, but I do encourage you to check out her work, because if you stick with it long enough, her books really do build into something quite special. So for me, Sherry's an example of a writer that people often talk about reading books, and if you read the first chapter and you don't like it, then you should move on. I think you should stick a bit longer with books sometimes, because the longer you read Sherry's books, the deeper and deeper she gets, the deeper you go with her, and the more her narratives start to peer through. And one of the things that stood out for me in the book was a conversation she had. Like I mentioned, she interviews a whole range of individuals about their use of technology, and I want to read to you the excerpt that kind of really got me thinking about the podcast for today. Sherry says, I interview Sanjay, 16. We will talk for an hour between two of his class periods. At the beginning of our conversation, he takes his mobile phone out of his pocket and turns it off. At the end of our conversation, he turns the phone back on. He looks at me ruefully, almost embarrassed. He has received over 100 text messages as we were speaking. Some are from his girlfriend who, he says, is having a meltdown. Some are from a group of close friends trying to organize a small concert. He feels a lot of pressure to reply and begins to pick up his books and laptop so he can find a quiet place to set himself to the task. As he says goodbye, and this is really what stood out to me, he adds, not speaking particularly to me, but more to himself as an afterthought to the conversation we just had. I can't imagine doing this when I get older. And then, more quietly, how long do I have to continue doing this? And it's a really interesting thought, because there's this kind of point when you use a smartphone constantly that it's a means to an end, right? Effectively, you're using it for an outcome. You're using it to communicate. You're using it to, buy a product. You're using it to connect with someone. You're using it for some outcome, right? It's a weird instrument in the sense that there is a continuous nature of it, where it's a constancy in our lives, but at the same time, our interactions with it are there's stops and starts to it. So there's a finish to the interaction with it. We pick it up, we check our online banking, we put it back down. The problem being, of course, is we pick it up over and over and over again for multiple different things. But the point being is that I think to Sanjay's point, it feels as if sometimes that we are going to eventually stop. You have to stop using it. Like, how long do you have to have a smartphone for? And it's a weird thing to think about because these things have only been around for the last 20 years. You know, iPhone, late noughties is when it started. And it's this permanent part of our lives now that if you think about it, you kind of want it to end. I mean, I just want you to take a second to think about what life's going to be like when you're 80, right? I'm 32. I literally just turned 32. I've got, 48 years until the big 80. And what happens when you wake up on your 80th birthday? Will you have a smartphone next to you? And God, I hope my answer, I guarantee you my answer is no. I want to be done with this device as soon as I can. That is despite me just getting a new iPhone 15 Pro. It's predominantly for the camera, not for the features, still trying to keep my screen time down. But, I love, love, love using my light phone on a regular basis. It's therapeutic, it's so soothing, and I just go back to it all the time. But, picture yourself 80 years old, waking up. Is your phone still next to your bed? I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably someone that doesn't have their phone next to their bed. But where is it? Where is it in the house? And what do you do on your 80th birthday, right? Do you get up? Hopefully your partner is still with you. They might roll over, give you a kiss and say happy birthday. And you might start to receive some phone calls from your kids, your grandkids, from your friends, congratulating you on making it to 80. But then what happens after that? You put the phone down, but do you pick it up again looking for content? Do you pick it up again looking to solve some problem, to buy something online? Do you pick it up again and scroll through Instagram? I mean, just take a second to think about that. What is even on your Instagram when you're 80 years old? Like, what kind of content are you consuming? I think, your friends who will all be 70 and 80 plus years old, what are they doing on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, for goodness sake? These things that have, molded their way into our society in such ingrained ways, thinking about their existence in, 40, 50 years time. Are they still so ingrained in what we do? I would hope not, but there is a chance that it is. And there's a chance that you pick up your phone at 80 and you scroll Instagram looking for content. Now, I would wonder what your kind of content your friends are posting, Lord only knows what the world will look like in 50 years time when you're at 80 years old. But chances are some of the content's going to take a little turn for the worse. Chances are some of your friends will have died by then. Some of your family will have died by then. There's going to be a lot of death between now and when you turn 80 years old if you are blessed enough to make it that far. And some of the content you're going to see probably won't be, photos of Europe or kids being born, except your grandkids. And if you follow their friends, then that's a bit unusual, right? But just think about what, are your friends posting content still? Is the latest influencer today, she or he still online posting content? There's got to be an end to it, right? For me, this is an education exercise. This is something that I'm trying to get out into the world as a way to, quote unquote, give back and strike some conversations around something that I'm quite passionate about. So hopefully there is an end one day when digital well-being has made its way through society in a really healthy way. But between now and then, I'll keep posting content. And I guess, but the point being, the latest influencer, how long will they be relevant for? And when do they stop posting content? If someone who's getting 10 million views per video on TikTok, how long until they stop posting content? When do they stop? How long do I have to continue to do this for? Because it feels like one day you're going to stop. And the point of this is that one day you probably want to stop, and one day you should think about stopping. Now, I don't know what day that is, what day you put down your phone, what day you turn off social media, but the day will come when you don't want it anymore. When the content you see from your friends isn't happy snaps of Europe or babies or the beach or dinner. It's probably people dying. You're going to see some funerals on Instagram, right? Rest in peace, John Smith or Jane Smith, whoever it is. But that's going to happen one day. The dynamic of what we see on our our content feed right now is going to change. And I think the question being how long do you have to continue doing this for starts to raise the idea is how long do you have to communicate in this kind of fragmented way? How long do you have to feel like you need to constantly connect with everyone? How long is it going to be, the world's going to be like this before it changes again? And I guess there's two options there. One is you can wait for the world to introduce the next change in communication. And I guess if you read any of Sherry's books, it does seem as if communication and connection continues to be fragmented and reduced from its original form of community, through individuals living together. But I digress. Will you wait though for the next huge evolution in the way we communicate to change the way you do it, or will you make an active decision to take a step backwards and say, hey, I don't want to engage with this thing forever. I don't want to deal with 100 text messages, 100 emails every single day. I don't want to, deal with notifications on my phone from Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or Twitter, whatever the hell it is. I don't want that. I kind of want to stop one day. So set yourself a goal. I guess that's the challenge for today's podcast, is set yourself a goal. So, all right, yes, I know I'm in my 30s or 20s or 40s, whatever it is, and I'm busy. Work's busy. I've got kids. I've got to juggle things. I need my phone. And that's cool. That's okay. That's life these days. You're going to make some money in this world. You're going to get ahead. You probably need to be a little bit on the pulse with your phone. I get it. Digital well-being acknowledges the fact that you need a device. It just considers that some boundaries are sometimes necessary too, particularly for kids. But surely, you're retired. You probably don't want to be driving Ubers if you do get retired. But when you retire, is that the point where you put your phone down? When you delete your emails? Do you really need it? Like, think about that at that stage of life. Do you really need an email? Do you really need a mobile phone? If you don't have the people around you that you want around you at that stage in your life, then maybe they're not meant to be around you. So I just challenge you to start thinking about that point in your life where you go, hey, this is enough. How, when Sanjay will probably think about it one day and go, well, I'm sure he would say, I don't want to have to do this, answer, 100 text messages when I'm 80 years old. So I encourage you to find that time, find that point in your life, in your existence, where you say, hey, that's kind of my goal. I want to get to 50 or 55 or whatever the year that I'm retired, and do away with my device, do away with my emails, do away with this, and just go out and live. Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. I do appreciate your time. I hope it was fruitful and did spark some ideas in your head. I will be trying to be back more regularly on a fortnightly basis. I know I missed fortnight with this one, so I'll be back very, very soon again with another podcast. Thanks so much.